Perfect. Thank you, Mandy. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Mandy mentioned, I'm Shivani Stuff. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Hunuit. And we really appreciate you taking out time to join us. So just a little bit of background about Hunuit before we jump in to talk about our solution and how we align with EdFi. So for the last 19 years, we have been working exclusively within the education industry with districts, state departments of education, and county offices to provide purpose-built data management solutions, really focusing on the whole child. And what we mean by that is the ability to correlate different data domains for high cardinality analysis. You can see some of our customers and thought leaders who have partnered with us on this journey for the last 19 years here on this slide. We were introduced to the EdFi Alliance late last summer, where we were really excited about the vision, and we saw huge potential in bringing our longitudinal data warehouse, machine learning models, and our extensive research-based analytics to the classroom. Mandy, I'm seeing chats. Am I supposed to respond to those right away? All right, I think it's just people just checking in. Great. All right, so so a little bit of what we want to share with you today is how we've aligned our solution to the EdFi standard and the work that's underway. So to get started, the four primary areas of focus for us as Hunuit have been federal and state accountability reporting, insights that help maximize student achievement, data that supports providing an equitable education for every student, and visibility to engage students, family, and community. So to give you a sense for the types of problems that we're solving under each one of these areas, again, this is just a sampling to provide you a context or frame of reference for the comprehensiveness of the Hunuit platform. So let's start on the left. So what we've done, is productize a lot of these problems that we've seen our customers, whether they're at the State Department level, county offices of education, where they're trying to provide a solution to multiple districts, or even at the district level, try to solve. So, for example, we all know with the new Every Student Succeeds Act requirements, states are required to create and publish annual report cards of data broken out by student, racial, and economic subgroups. And for the first time, they're asking for things like military, foster, homeless student breakouts. Again, collecting all of this information and providing reports in a streamlined fashion, we've heard consistently has been a challenge. Then we've worked very closely with folks like the state superintendent at West Virginia Department of Education, who really wanted to build a bottoms-up approach of accountability. And his vision was to provide a mechanism for data-driven like schools analysis, where principals and district leaders would be able to identify schools like me, that are demographically like me, and based on how each of those schools were doing on different state assessments, local assessments, interim assessments, they all could exchange notes to figure out, okay, your demographic subgroup looks a lot like mine in my school district. What are you doing to get those high math achievement rates? What can I do in order to make a difference there? Then we worked really closely with Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction to create a school improvement planning process that we've embedded right within the platform. So we all know that all school districts and state departments have to create strategic plans. Oftentimes, you're trying to measure certain KPIs. So, for example, how do you improve your year progression rates, and how are you going to track and monitor that? So instead of your strategic plans living in a completely separate area, God forbid, if they're on a piece of paper and all of your analytics in a different area, it's really complicated for schools, districts, states in order to correlate these pieces of information together. So what we've done by partnering with thought leaders in the space is create productized solutions that we can offer all of our customers. And that's really what we've been doing for the last 19 years. We've invested significantly in machine learning and statistical modeling. So on that front, our machine learning models are able to predict kids who are at risk of dropping out of school, or college and career readiness predictions for entrance exam readiness, college enrollment, college persistence beyond the second year, and college graduation. Social emotional learning, there's a ton of research that's been publicly made available that helps understand how non-academic constructs have a great bearing on academic outcomes. And so we've been able to, again, bring all of that data into our platform, correlate these non-academic constructs with academic outcomes, and showcase how the social emotional learning information can be powerful when used in the right mechanism in the classroom. Then a lot of focus on providing kids an equitable education and making sure that, you know, all the programs that we're investing in, we're seeing an ROI at the end of the day. So we've pulled together information from financial systems and correlated that with student metrics, teacher metrics, staff metrics, to be able to determine, you know, not only things like your revenue and budget, so you can see them all in a consistent fashion versus logging into 5 different systems, but more importantly, things like per pupil spending. Enrollment projections is an area that we're researching heavily right now, and we want to bring to market either late 2019, early 2020, and we're doing a considerable amount of work on that front. Human capital has been a big focus of ours over the last 2 years, providing school districts and state departments visibility into staff demographics, retention, attendance, compensation tracking, performance tracking, leadership pipeline development, teacher effects on student performance, and then again, the correlation of staff performance and student performance, and what does that look like? So a lot of work, and again, to make sure that, you know, our highest needs schools have the right staff. Do we have the right pipeline of teachers and leaders in order to serve those school districts? You know, there's clearly a ton of data and a ton of correlation required in order to produce those metrics, and that's been a huge focus of ours over the last couple of years. And then finally, you know, there's definitely a notion of making sure that, you know, we're able to share this information using our public-facing dashboards, and of course, you know, in a secure fashion, so all of the right single-cell suppression rules are applied, so only the information that you want displayed to the community is actually displayed. But in addition to just making public portals available, we also want to make sure that students are taking an active role in owning and having an elevated level of accountability towards their success. So we're working really closely right now with a district in Texas on student action plans, where not only are we going to make certain pieces of data available to students, where they can log in and see their dashboards, but they can also set their own goals and see how they're tracking towards activities like their assignments and tests and so on. All right, so this is, again, just a sampling of the depth and the breadth of problems that we're trying to solve. And I have screenshots of data that I will show you to help bring all of this to life. The way we've organized all of this information is in 5 product modules, because we know that, you know, some districts and states and systems are really, really data savvy. They're hungry for all of these different pieces of information, and you know, some of them partnered with us right out of the gate on all of these initiatives, right? Around, it could be around college and career readiness, early warning, just having basic what we call essentials reporting around your attendance, academics, behavior, discipline, enrollment, assessments, you know, just those types of basics. And then we have others that have partnered with us on early warning and intervention solutions, or student success solutions, which of course include college and career readiness, post-secondary, bringing in national student clearinghouse data, and then the operations pieces, which include finance, health and wellness, school culture and climate surveys, and then the human capital management components. So the way we offer these solutions is very flexible. We offer them in a multi-tenant fashion, or if you're a larger district or a state department, a single tenant, or for some state departments, depending upon how you're rolling this out, you may or may not be rolling this out to districts and county offices of ed. We provide a single tenant solution for your county or your state, but then within that, a multi-tenant solution. And that's what you're seeing over here. These solutions can be hosted, and we fully host and manage that for you, or we support on-prem deployments as well. And clearly, the only way we're able to bring in all of this data, all of your history, and provide such deep, enriched analytics and reporting is because of having what we believe is the single most comprehensive data model. What you're seeing on the screen over here are just, 12 domains, but I couldn't have all, 75 domains listed here on the screen. But we're able to bring in all these different pieces of data together and correlate them in order to provide you the insights that you need. So because we've been at this for the last 19 years, prior to partnering with EdFi, we, of course, have built over the last 19 years a full suite of connectors to all of the major student information systems, all the state assessments. Every time we partner with a new district or a state, if we don't have a state assessment already built out, we will build out, the formats for pulling in all of the state assessment data, including any of the interim assessments, local assessments, because we know that's what's really important at the classroom level. Any surveys, any documents, any auxiliary files, whatever it may be. And then we also pull in data from transportation management systems, food management systems, program memberships, HR, finance, including things like we have county offices and some state departments that are pulling in data from juvenile justice programs and other youth programs. Early childhood is a big focus right now, especially with some of the work that we're going to be doing with Louisiana Department of Education. That's a big focus of theirs. So again, we've adopted a system agnostic approach, which allows us to bring in all of this data and make sense of it and provide you a longitudinal data warehouse, machine learning algorithms over all of your history where we can do accurate predictions versus just giving you a descriptive and diagnostic analysis, and all of the comprehensive reporting. And of course, as I mentioned last summer, we were introduced to the EdFi Alliance. We were extremely excited by their vision and what they're trying to do. So we've spent the last 9 months on building out our EdFi connector that I will talk more about in the next slide. So in addition to connecting to all of these systems and providing out-of-the-box reports and dashboards, which are completely configurable, because we know that we probably get 80% of the use cases right, because we see so much of similarity across all of the systems that we work across. But we absolutely know that every school district, every state department, every county office has their own unique needs. And in order to allow for that uniqueness, we do everything within our platform is configurable. So we bring you 80% of the way there, that you can leverage all of our out-of-the-box reports and then just configure the 20% based on your requirements. In addition to our out-of-the-box reports, we also provide embedded right within our platform ad hoc reporting tools. And so we have partnered with Microsoft and Power BI, and Power BI is embedded right within our platform. So your end users would not know anything different. However, your Power users, in addition to configuring our out-of-the-box dashboards, are also able to configure and build their own reports within Power BI that you can embed within the platform and make available to all of the users. And the Power BI licenses are included, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to set up servers, don't have to do any of that. We do all of the provisioning for you on your behalf. The last piece that brings all of this together is probably one of the single most important pieces and value props that we bring to our customers, which is providing integrated professional development. So for the last 19 years, because we've been working primarily and exclusively within education, we've seen that, no matter how simple and intuitive you make reports and dashboards and data and insights, and especially as we're moving towards the world of predictive analytics, machine learning, there is definitely professional development that needs to go along with it. So what we've done is we've embedded we have a library of 3,000 different courses and videos that we've created in partnership with subject matter experts that align with national and state standards. And we have integrated those professional development videos right within our analytics platform. And I'll show you that when I show you screenshots of the solution. The great thing about that is, if you just think about something as social emotional learning as an example, there's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of talk about the research on correlating, all of these academic, non-academic constructs together. But think about a third grade teacher, right? If you put social emotional learning data in front of her and she can see that, a kid says that they don't feel safe coming to school and they're not doing well, the grades are not reflecting that. She's seeing the data, but what is she supposed to do about it? And one of our county offices customers, Santa Clara County in California, they shared with us that that, the cell curriculum is so loosely structured right now for teachers, and especially given some of the statistics around just teacher retention and turnover in general, that, there's, I believe the last report I read was 260,000 teachers within the U.S. turnover every year. And about 100,000 classrooms this year are going to be populated with teachers who don't have any prior teaching experience. So when we think about what's the reality of our workforce, it's super critical for us to make sure that, as we're making advancements and bringing all of this data together, we're also providing them an opportunity to learn as they go, so they can actually make use of this data and put it into effect in order to maximize student performance. All right, so with that, I'm now going to talk a little bit about the technical architecture and the overview, and then I'll get into the most exciting piece of the presentation, which is examples of screenshots. And I've taken a sampling across all of the different areas that I had on this chart, so you could get a taste for what some of our out-of-the-box reports look like. So on the technical architecture and workflow perspective, so here, so these are, I'm sure all of these or a subset of these systems probably sound familiar to you. The student information systems, assessments, HR, finance, transportation, program services, meal eligibility, early childhood, and then of course, you have your auxiliary classroom files, interim local assessments, FAFSA, NSC, National Student Clearinghouse data. So we all know that we have all of these different source systems that we have to work with at a school district. So most of the EdFi implementations that we have seen thus far are starting with the student level information and to bring data into the classroom. And so there are EdFi compliant student information systems, and this is an area where once we set up an ODS, an EdFi operational data store. So once we host that, and by the way, if you've already embarked on that project, and if you already are hosting your ODS by yourself, that's completely fine. If you're thinking about starting a project, we can absolutely host the ODS for you. And then you will basically work with your source system vendors in order to bring the data into the EdFi ODS. So that's step number one of all of the EdFi projects. And as you all are probably familiar, the EdFi ODS is a normalized transactional operational data store. So again, not really meant for heavy analytics, but a good place to bring all of these different pieces of information together and store them in the ODS. So again, there's the source system vendors and EdFi APIs that you would work with in order to bring this data into this ODS. Then what we do from there is we do a comprehensive map and gap session with you. We will help identify any gaps in the data that we're seeing for the analytics and the metrics that we need to support. As a part of that, we will go through a comprehensive data quality process. And just to give you a sense for what that is, because this is something that we run into with every single implementation that we do, and honestly, a big area of expertise that we have built out for the last 19 years. So when I say data validation, especially when you're trying to provide analytics, whether it's to your district leadership, to the board, or even to teachers in the classroom, the number one goal is to get the data right. And accuracy is super important. And the first thing that we always run into the moment we start pulling all of this data out of, whether it's your source systems directly or from the EdFi ODS, is just the data quality validation starts kicking in, right? So these are things like, are kids enrolled in classes that are inactive? And trust me, there are tons of these use cases that we stumble upon. Or attendance dates that fall outside of the enrollment date. Or you have an age field and you have a date of birth field, and the math on that doesn't add up, right? So if someone is born in 2003, but their age is 12, clearly the math doesn't add up. And these sorts of errors exist across the board. Or matching processes for assessments, right? So very rarely do we get an assessment file that has the exact same student identifier for a kid that is there in the student information system. So there's tons of data quality work that we need to do in order to make sure that the data is as accurate as it can be, in order to make sure that we're flagging tier 1, tier 2 errors, report them back to you, and make sure that you can correct them within the ODS and better yet within the source system in which they're originating. So we'll go through all of that process with you, and then once we've gone through the data quality process, we start loading the data in our staging environment. We start loading the data in our longitudinal data warehouse. Here's where we go through 3 different steps of cleansing the data, conforming the data, and making sure that we're creating data for complete picture. So what I really mean by that, this is really the place where a lot of the business rules and the transformation magic happens in order to leverage the power of our out-of-the-box dashboards. So these are things like helping us working with you to help decipher if an attendance day is a half day of attendance or a full day of attendance, or one of the most important and key metrics when you're doing your ESSA dashboards, or frankly any accountability reporting that you need to do, is calculations of your average daily attendance, your average daily membership. And again, if we don't know if a calendar day is an attendance day or not, we're not going to be able to do those calculations effectively. So here is where we bring all of the data into our longitudinal data warehouse, and we have business rules, either that will just kick in because we know that that's what we do for every single school system. And in addition to that, we'll just run all of those rules by you to make sure that you don't do things a little differently. And of course, we know that every school district, every state does things a little differently. And so we will work with you in making sure that those business rules are accurate when we're bringing all of that data in. All right, so we bring all of the data in, do the conformance, do the cleansing. And here again, the other big advantage of having a longitudinal data warehouse is not only do we create all of these calculated metrics that we're eventually going to use in our dashboards, but also because of the way we store history, we can provide you a really comprehensive view of the longitudinal history of whatever KPI that you're looking for and trend analysis. So what I mean by that is you will be able to see not only data for the current school year or whatever, but you can see reports spanning over 3 years or 5 years or whatever the amount of data or history is that you're going to be bringing into the data warehouse. We have some customers that we work with that have all of their history. So we have 15, 20 years of history that we're bringing in for them. I think for West Virginia Department of Ed, we bring in 15 years of history for them. So again, bring in all of this data, and then comes the magic. Then we're able to provide you all of this data feeds our out-of-the-box dashboards and reports that we've built by investing significant amount of research to make sure that these are the right metrics. And again, just going beyond even descriptive and diagnostic analysis, we do predictive and prescriptive analysis too. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I show you screenshots of the solution. We're able to work with any reporting tools. So we know that some, like I said, we have Power BI already embedded for your purposes. Licenses are already included in the platform. In the platform. But we know some customers may have a preference to use MicroStrategy or Tableau. You can bring in all of those reports, so your staff and your users don't have to log into 50 different places in order to see their data and metrics. And as I mentioned, with the single cell suppression rules for the public-facing dashboards, we also make sure that all of the other security requirements, the FERPA, HIPAA, PII, all of that is accurately handled. We have role, user, and role level security to make sure that only the users who are meant to see the data are actually going to see the data, and all of those pieces come out of the box. It's a configuration on our side, but all of those pieces come out of the box again because we built this solution primarily for the education industry. All right, so now getting into the fun part of the presentation, I wanted to walk you through, because again, all of this comes to life, and you can actually see real life examples of how we're able to pull in the data and what the reports really look like. So I'm just going to give you a tour over here. So starting at the top, this is where I was talking about the 5 different products that we have. So this is your what we call essentials, your Kunuit essentials, and just like the name describes, these are essential pieces or building blocks that are required for every other piece of reporting that you would need to do. So for example, all of your enrollment, special education, attendance, behavior, academics, assessments, and then within each one of these, you can see that we have, again, a whole bunch of reports under there. So in this specific example right now, you're seeing a sample ESSA report card. There's gap analysis dashboards that we have, achievements, various different kinds of achievement dashboards, ELL progression rates, graduation, and LCAP is specific to California. So this is a sample data dashboard that we've created for California. But anyway, what you can see here on the screen is that in this ESSA dashboard, we have a GIS visualization here on the left-hand side, all of your demographic information on the right-hand side. And again, we discussed this earlier in the presentation, but for ESSA, we need to include 5 measures of academic achievement, academic progress, English language proficiency, high school graduation rates, and usually there's one more, which is typically chronic absenteeism or whatever. So the rest of the screen, which you don't see right now, towards the bottom, has those indicators. And then these different domains on the top, when you drill in, they actually form the basis for all of that information that populates these dashboards. And this is an internal-facing dashboard, but you can see how you would be able to make some of this public-facing too, and we do provide a public-facing solution. The other piece I will call out, and you'll see this almost on every single dashboard, is these filters. So you can filter the data by, I think we have 10 or 12 different groups, and again, depending upon who you are and what type of security level you have access to, you may be able to see certain ones and may not be able to see certain ones. So for example, the free and reduced lunch indicator. But again, you'll be able to filter if you're a district, or if you're a state, you'll be able to filter by districts. If you're a district, you'll be able to filter by schools, by school groups, by gender, ethnicity, race, demographics, students, staff, everything. So we provide all sorts of drill down options and all sorts of roll up aggregated options. So again, this is another example of, I just picked a performance indicator example. So this is KPIs on state assessments. You can see ELA state assessments, math state assessments, what percentage of students are passing the assessments, and so again, all different types of reports. And again, right now in these screenshots, I'm just assuming that I'm admin, so I get to see all of them. But when you actually roll this out, there'll be persona-specific user experiences that we will recommend to you. So for example, we have a set of dashboards that are meant exclusively for teachers in the classroom. Then there's a certain set of dashboards that are exclusively meant for principals and other district leadership, and so on and so forth. And so not everybody gets to see everything. I'm just showing you different flavors of what the reports look like. And then, you can see over here filters, and these filters get carried on all across the solution. So, you don't have to keep, if you filter down a metric or a dashboard to a specific school system, as you move from dashboard to dashboard, that filter persists, and it provides for a really easy and intuitive user experience. I think I touched on this a little bit before, but I'm going to talk about it again because it's so important, is anywhere, so from any of these high-level reports, aggregated reports, you can click on any of these metrics and drill down to specifics. So in this case, I've drilled down to whatever the report, I'm hiding the report up here, so I could show you this piece, which is, you can see on the screen, I've drilled down to actual student level detail. Again, this is the sample data that we made up. It's munged information, but you can see, in this specific example, all of the different test results. And really quickly here, I can select a group of students and create either a cohort. I can add them to a group, or better yet, if I need to, I can add them to an intervention. And in a few slides, I'll show you what the intervention module looks like. It's a really seamless process to add them to the intervention, so they become a part of, so you can, conduct your interventions. Again, the beauty of all of this is not having the staff needing to log into 20 different systems in order to get to the results that they need to get to in order to help the kids the way they want to. All right, so this example, this is just an example of, I picked up how has our school diversity changed year over year. Just as an example to show you longitudinal analysis. So you can see over here, I have data going back to 2010. And again, every report, so we have tons of reports out of the box that have this longitudinal view. So you can see here, I can go back to, all years of history, depending upon the data that I have. And I can project this in time, so I can do trend analysis. So just say, for example, this was a report on my EL progression, right? How has that improved or changed over the last 5 years? I could do that trend analysis, and I could see that, for the last 5 years, again, broken down by economic subgroups, racial subgroups, by gender, by grades, all sorts of different roll-ups and drill downs. And if you're noticing some of these icons up here on the right, these are basically icons that allow you to export the data to CSV, to PDF. You can even, like, let's say I wanted to use this and attach it to my school improvement plans that I talked about earlier. I'd be able to do that right from here. And then you can expand these metrics as well, and add additional detail. And I'll talk about that in a second here. And again, if you didn't notice, again, like I mentioned, every single one of these domains at the top, right? So you can see at the top of the menu, there's district, enrollment, SPED, special education, attendance, etc. So when you click on enrollment now, you see that I have 4 different views: overview, admissions, withdrawals, programs. And under each one of these, there are multiple different metrics. I just have blown this up to show you one metric, but under each one of them, we have every dashboard of ours on average has between 5 to 10 different metrics. And again, this is just so we can provide you with a comprehensive library. You can pick and choose which ones you want, and of course, then you can configure and customize all of these reports. If you want to change the labels on something, or if you want to change the filters on something, or if you want to change the title of this report, if you don't want it to say how is our student diversity changed, but you want to use some other language, you can do all of that. This is another example of, I just wanted to show you the screenshot of all of the different, I talked about assessments earlier. So every new state, so again, for the states that we have customers in right now, we have already built our state assessment loaders. For the ones that we've not, as soon as we partner with a district or a state or a county office, we will build your state assessments. And in addition, we support all of the national assessments like ACT, SAT, DIBELS, etc. And then, individually, if I'm sure all of you have in your local assessments, interim assessments, so we'll work with you on what those specifically are and bring those into the platform. So here you can just see examples of the state assessment, and across the top you can see, again, this is just for illustrative purposes, but in this demo, I have NWEA, STAR, Access, ACT, SAT, and then a score roster. All right, and then you can, again, these dashboards, again, are showing you state achievement scores. And by the way, all of these are real screenshots with real data. So again, and that's what we mean by out of the box, like all of these reports come out of the box. All right, moving on to early warning. So I mentioned this a little bit, but I'll talk about it again, since there's a lot of cover in this presentation, but we've invested significantly over the last several years in terms of developing our machine learning algorithms to predict, specifically with early warning, which kids are at risk of dropping out of school. So really what we're predicting in this case is, are they going to graduate on time or are they not going to graduate on time? So the predictions that we have and the algorithms that we have basically use 27 different student factors. And to name just a few, we use attendance mobility, and by mobility we mean school changes, behavior incidences, test scores, state interim, ACT, SAT, GPA credits, demographics, ELL, SPED, free reduce, etc. We also are constantly considering others. So for example, right now we are working with one of the districts in Illinois to bring in sibling information, because they did some of their own research and they found that if if a household has 2 or more kids, if an older sibling drops out of school, then it significantly increases the probability of the other siblings dropping out of school as well. So we're working on bringing in other factors like siblings, home changes or address changes, and social emotional learning, and there are a few others that we have under consideration right now. So if you look at this chart, a few different other things I'll call out. So of course you recognize the filters, you recognize the menu again. So here you can see your at risk. So this is an overview. This overview page, provides you information around, average graduation probability per school, and then various different factors, right? So what are your attendance factors, your behavior factors, your assessment factors, and so on and so forth. And probably the single most important piece of information is here on the right, which is your red, yellow, green indicators, which are basically telling you how many newly identified students or how many newly identified students have been identified, how many new students have been identified to be at risk, right? So newly identified students at risk. And this is really important because every morning when you come in, you probably want to know, I'm sure your principals want to know, and then your teachers in the classroom specifically want to know which kids are at risk today, right? And the great thing about this is, so at the minimum, we require 2 years of history in order to run our predictive algorithms. And we, for most districts and state and county offices typically have 2 years of history. If you don't, then we can use operational measures. But the reason why we like to use your data is because then we will identify the cut scores based on your students, right? And just to give you an example of what that means, so just because, and I'm just going to use this as an example, let's say that the national average for attendance is 95%, right? We definitely know from our customers that are using our solution that, some of them, the cutoff for attendance might be 98%, and for some of them it may be 89%, right? And so you see, because those different percentages can swing so significantly, we don't just want to just pick a number out of thin air and build at-risk factors based on that. We want to make sure that the data is specific to you, to your students, and to your history, right? So the more history we have, so if we have 12 years of history, we can predict kids who are at risk of dropping out of school right from grade 1. So basically, for every year of history, for every grade, we need those many years of history. So if you want to predict starting at grade 1, we'll need 12 years of history. If you want to predict starting at grade 2, we need 10 years of history, and so on and so forth. So that's how we build our predictive algorithms. And so you're seeing this classified as basically high, medium, and low risk or student probability in terms of graduation. And this is built using a composite score. So the composite score includes the overall probability and overall probability on each actionable factor. So remember the factors I talked about earlier were attendance, GPA, test scores, credits, behaviors, demographics, mobility, etc. So based on those, we build a composite score, and that's how we determine high, medium, low risk. The other really important piece to call out over here is the integrated PD that I talked about earlier in the presentation. So you can see up on the right-hand side is you can see these 3 different PD courses. So each screen has contextually aligned, or each dashboard, I should say, has contextually aligned professional development. Now, this is, of course, our PD that we have created as a result of partnering with subject matter experts over the last 19 years. However, if you have your own PD, you can bring that into the platform as well. Our main goal with this is to make sure that we're providing a one-stop shop to your staff, so you're not having your teachers or whoever it may be log into this system and then log into that system. We all want to consolidate it in one place. So the next thing I'll talk about, but I just want to, again, bring our focus back to the menu here. So you see at risk, you see the overview, students at risk, students data wall, risk factors, proximity to cut score, school-wide risk. Of course, I'm not going over each and every dashboard here, but I just wanted to give you a sense for the types of reports we have. But I will talk about interventions. So on the top, you can see trends, interventions, outcomes. Outcomes are really then going back to, okay, so what did we predict and what our outcomes are, right? So how accurate were we with our predictions? And really the goal with our predictions is to make sure that, we're minimizing false positives and false negatives. We know that, there's only so much of a budget that you guys have in order to implement interventions. And we want to make sure that you have a high return on those. And that's the reason why. And the other really good reason is, you don't just want to catch kids. Of course, we want to help kids no matter where they're at, right? But if we only start identifying kids who are at risk in high school, we're probably too late, especially because in most cases, we've seen that the kids are probably showing signs of dropping out sooner than that. And so really by using these predictions, we want to make sure that we can predict kids who are going to be dropping out as soon as possible. So you guys can do the best that you can within the classrooms to make sure that, we're helping, making sure that the kids are getting the right kind of support that they need in order to stay in school. Okay, I'm going to increase the pace over here because I know I need to leave some time for questions. This is just a data wall for early warning indicators. You can see all of the different scores across the top, all of the different students across the bottom, and then, out of the red and green to tell you, are they at risk or are they not at risk? This is just a screenshot from our intervention module. So once you put a kid in an intervention, I didn't go through all the processes of showing you how you set up an intervention and how you create an intervention, but at least you can see over here, at the top, you can see the amount of dosage for this intervention, how many kids are in the intervention. You can record their attendance. This is not their school attendance, but their attendance within the intervention, and then their goals within the intervention as well. And then you can take notes and refer notes, and these notes can be made public or private, so all sorts of functionality around that. And then I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste for what we have for college and career readiness. So I talked about the 4 different predictions that we have: ACT, SAT, readiness, college enrollment, college persistence beyond the 2nd year, and college graduation. A lot of the factors that we use for early warning are pretty similar to what we use for college and career. We include a few additional factors, like we include our National Student Clearinghouse data, and a few others that we work with you to make sure we can load those into the system. But again, very similar, right? Which groups are on track, not on track, by grade level, by ethnicity, by demographic subgroups. And again, across the top, you can see, credit progress, missing credits, credit attainment, 9th to 10th grade transition, all sorts of reports. All right, I'm just going to breeze through some of these others. This is an example of one of the social emotional learning dashboards. This is an example of finance dashboard. This is the per pupil spending I was talking about earlier, and all of the different allocations that you have, spending trends, health and wellness, school climate. This is an example of a human capital management dashboard, which is showing you staff average years of experience and then passing rates for different assessments. A really, really powerful dashboard when you're looking at staff versus students. And then we have other dashboards that talk about teacher effects, performance tracking, compensation tracking, high needs, do we have the right skill set for the right schools, all sorts of different, and you can see, just some of the different types of reports up here at the top. Again, this is a staff and student data wall. So you can see all the staff names across the rows, what their level of education is, and then, for this particular staff member, what is their KPI look like, right? For total number of incidents, attendance percentage, and all of the different other metrics that you want to track for students in their classes. This is an example of a Power BI report, and hopefully you can see that it doesn't look any different than any of our other reports, from a presentation standpoint. And that's exactly the goal, right? We want to make sure that your staff doesn't get confused about all of these different tools. They don't need to know, if this is an ad hoc reporting tool versus all of the other ones are out of the box reports. They don't need to care about that. They don't need to really care about that level of detail. All they should care about is, I have this data need. If I had this piece of information, it would make my life so much easier because I would be able to help do X. And that's what we just want to make sure that we're providing you, not only our platform, but Power BI as well. So you can create ad hoc reports. All right, so touching a little bit into the implementation timeline. So we've learned a lot over the last 12 months. Of course, we've been doing this for 19 years, but clearly when we're working, directly with source systems, to pull all of this information, it's really different than when we're working with EdFi. And this, like I said, we've been doing this over the last 12 months. So even though these steps are accurate, I have the next screen which talks about considerations for a successful deployment. Of course, we need to get your environment set up, right? Whether we're hosting it or you're hosting it yourself, you need to get your environment set up. And one of the first few things we're going to need from you is credentials, so we can access your systems, whether it's your FI ODS or whatever it may be. Believe it or not, we've seen with some of our recent implementations that just getting access, to log in, it can be a really, really time-consuming process. In some cases, we've had to wait 6 weeks or 8 weeks till we get credentials in order to log into the system. And so, again, this is just one of those considerations to make sure that as we're putting together timelines for these things, we're taking into account, potential roadblocks that we might run into. Of course, then we establish connectivity to your system. We deploy and configure. We do all of the data quality validation, and then we'll, do best practices, usage and adoption training, and then we go live and we iterate. However, as I mentioned, there are certain considerations I'd like to talk about as it relates to, the EDFI implementation. One is, just being realistic about scope and timeline, especially if this is your first deployment. As I was talking about on the architecture screen, there's a lot of dependency, right? There's dependency for you on your source system vendors, whether it's Aspen or Skyward or Synergy or PowerSchool or whatever it may be, in order to bring that data into the EDFI ODS. Make sure the data is available, make sure it's complete, make sure it's accurate to the level of, to whatever level that you can ensure that it's accurate. And really this is new development considerations, right? Bringing in data from existing transactional systems into this new transactional system. And, making sure that we're accurately accounting for the level of effort that's required, how, EDFI has recommendations on how you should account for multi-year data, whether you stand up an ODS per year or you bring multi-year data into a single ODS. And then, of course, when the data model changes, when the breaking changes, all of those things can have downstream implications. And of course, as I mentioned, we've learned a ton over the last 12 months, and these are just considerations that we will work with you on to make sure that, unlike working with a source system where you have all of the data for all years and, on an ongoing basis, especially if this is a new deployment where you're pulling in this data into the ODS, for the first time. We just need to make sure that the scope is realistic and the timelines are realistic to account for, just the learning process that we will need to go through. All right. I do have a few more slides, but I think these were the high-level topics I wanted to cover. So with that, Mandy, I think we have some questions. So should we open it up for questions?
Yes. Yep. So I have had several questions come in, so I think we can try and get through what we can get through. But anybody, if we don't get to your question, I promise we will get to you offline. We did have one person just following up and making sure that we are recording this. We are. That will be sent out. So just wanted to confirm that. So the first question that we got in was a little bit earlier, so I'm not sure if you covered it a little bit in your implementation slide there, but it says, you mentioned that you can host the EDFI ODS for us. Does this include the API and custom extensions? Can you create the extensions for us?
Yes, we can create the extensions for you, but and maybe I'll go to the next slide that talks about the implementation here. However, we're not, we're an analytics, we provide data warehousing and analytics. So if you're talking about these APIs, that we don't do. So that you will need to work with the source system vendors, or we have partners that we can bring in who are really well versed with this side of the equation, who can work with you on bringing this data into the ODS. But this is not our area of expertise. What we've built over the last 19 years is direct connects into the source systems, and that's what we do. But bringing in data from the source systems into the ODS, that will require either working with a source system vendor, or we have partners that we can recommend that you work with.
Okay, great. So then I have a question. So it says public portal. Is there any integration with existing systems like SISs, LMSs to minimize the number of accounts we ask parents to maintain? If not, do you have single sign-on protocols or that you support Google, Clever, OneRoster, etc.?
Yes, all of the above. So yes, we can support single sign-on, and that's what we do not only for parent portals, but for all of our even for teachers and staff members. So we support single sign-on. For most districts support Active Directory, so we do Active Directory integration. So as long as there's some sort of a federated mechanism for us to get your users, we can set them up so it's a single sign-on experience, and they don't have to. We do support G Suite authentication. We support, yeah. So I guess the answer to that is yes, we support that. So folks don't have to maintain 20 different logins, and it's a streamlined process.
Great. And then I have a question that we have someone who joined partway through, but I think it would be good to reiterate. Can districts add new reports, and can you extend for new sets of data not supported by the EdFi model?
Yes, yes, exactly. So again, I'll go back, sorry guys. I'm gonna go back to the slide. So yes, we can. So working with some of our districts right now, there are definitely pieces that are not supported by EdFi. So what we'll do is we'll let them know, we make them aware of what those gaps are, so they can make sure that it gets added to the roadmap. But then, yep, we can help you bring in those pieces of information and help you report on those. I think the second part of that question was, can you create your own reports? Absolutely. So I don't know if you were there when you saw examples of our screenshots of some of the reports that we provide. That's our proprietary platform, so you can create your own reports. We have some districts who create all of their own reports themselves. Of course, if you don't want to do it yourself, we can support you, but you can create your own reports either using our proprietary tools. If you want, and I would recommend that strategy if you've decided that that's a report that that you want to persist and everybody needs to see. But if it's a quick ad hoc thing, that just a quick answer that somebody is looking for, but you don't necessarily need to maintain that report or provide it to everybody. In that case, I would just say, like I mentioned before, we have Power BI embedded within the platform. You can just drag and drop metrics, and you can present them with that one-off answer. But if you do want to persist the Power BI reports too, you will have the ability to do so. So yes, answer to everything in that question is yes, and we have multiple alternatives. Great.
So then I have another question here. Can dashboards and reports be directly embedded into a website using SaaS CMSs? They list a whole bunch: Final Site, School Messenger, Foxbright, etc., rather than a click here that takes them somewhere else.
So can it exist? Yeah. So if the question was, can you embed this within another system? I suppose you could just, you could absolutely iframe our platform if you wanted. I don't know if the single sign-on question helps you because that eliminates another login. But I mean, you could. Ours is a web-based platform, so you can embed it wherever you want to, I suppose.
Okay. And then I have a question that if the ODS is already populated, how long would it take to have this product up and running?
That's a very good question. So assuming, and yes, and I didn't talk about timelines. So what we're working on right now with another district is bringing in what I described as all of the essentials, and maybe I'll go to a screen so I can show everybody or maybe this one works. All of the essentials data, which is enrollment, enrollment, behavior, assessments, academics, what did I miss? Discipline, attendance. I think that covers it. So so we're working on that, and we are working on, and we plan on having our early warning predictions done by the summer. And student success, like I mentioned before, uses the same data as early warning, so that solution should work. So all of the dashboards and reports, so maybe I'll point to the next slide, all of the dashboards and reports are already there. If you have a fully populated ODS, the domains that I mentioned before, we're able to pull that data in, and we can provide you these reports. And then for whatever connectors that we don't have built yet, so for example, we don't have our connectors right now built out for like programs and program membership, for example. So, those pieces, as we develop them throughout the remaining of this year, we'll start making that available to you. But yeah, if you already have a fully populated ODS, that's great. That will give us a head start for sure.
Okay, there are a few more questions, but they are very specific, I think, so one is very specifically about Michigan. One is going back to that list of API vendors we might recommend. So I think that's kind of all the questions for now, but we will definitely follow up with you guys on those very specific questions afterwards.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you all so much for your time, and thank you for the questions. This was great. Please feel free to reach out to us. If you have more questions, or I would highly recommend reaching out to us if you guys want a demo. I hope you saw the power of the platform in terms of the screenshots that I was sharing. But again, screenshots don't do justice to this solution. We've really invested blood, sweat, and tears and worked with our thought leaders in the space. Like I mentioned before, West Virginia Department of Education, Wisconsin DPI, Santa Clara County Office, Spring Branch, all across the U.S. In terms of building the solution that we have today and making sure that everything that we have is applicable to a wide audience. As I mentioned, we know that you all are going to have your specific requirements, so everything is going to be configurable. Everything is. The data model is, the platform is, the reports are, the dashboards are, even the machine learning models. Of course, we would recommend you use what we have out of the box, but if that doesn't work for you, we provide a full turnkey data management solution and platform. So please reach out to us. We'd love to schedule a demo. We'd love to talk to you more about the solution and how we potentially can help.